Today's lesson is the beginning of our adventure into watercolor, right? We're going to speak about water and color and the interaction of water and color, and the whole semester is going to be dedicated about picture making using water and color. Water is an incredibly dynamic substance, right? It's out of control unless we contain it, right? And so the idea that we suspend pigments into this substance that is so fluid, and it's the origins of all life, right? It's quite profound. So we suspend pigments in this and we push it around and we try to create pictures out of it. So there's a tremendous amount of sort of control and uncontrollable characteristic of water that we have to come to terms with as we use it, okay? But that we're going to set aside for a minute, and we're going to take a look at color itself, right? Color surrounds us, right? Color is all around us, right? There's a tremendous amount of material that you can look at to understand the science of color and so forth, right? The visual spectrum in this particular material is interesting to reference, right? But we're going to get into the understanding color and constructing it in a manner so that we can strategize in how to use color, right? The color wheel is a great instrument to have, right? This has all the relationships of the color organized in a circular manner, right? We have our prismatic colors on the exterior, right? And then we have all our achromatic solutions here moving towards the middle. And we will be referencing this all semester. It's a great tool to have, right? To help us understand color itself. So let's take a look. Let's reconstruct the color wheel here a little bit, right, for ourselves, so we can better understand how to use color, right? Okay, so we have three primary colors that we have identified, right? Red, blue, and yellow. All colors originate from these three colors. It's very interesting. Very profound. Three colors, all color starts with three colors: red, blue, and yellow. Obviously, there are various hues that, and the chemistry changes, so the hue of the color changes, but essentially it's red, blue, and yellow, right? And all color originates from those three colors, right? So let's reconstruct this, the color wheel here, okay? So our first color is red, okay, yellow, and blue, right? These are our primary colors. They create this triad, okay? And if we are to mix red and yellow, right, we get orange, which is a secondary color, right? And if we're to mix yellow and blue, we get green, right? Which is another secondary color, right? And then blue and red, we get a violet, which is another secondary color, right? And so we have this circular configuration, right? These colors on the outside, right, are the prismatic, or synonymously chromatic colors, okay? Now, the color wheel is divided into two parts, right? Right down here, right? And it's important to note that the one side, right, encompasses the warm colors, or hot colors, I like to call it, right? And then on this side are the cool colors, right? Now, this is important to remember, as since we're picture making, these warm and cool colors in relationship to each other play a role dynamically, graphically, right? Warm colors or hot colors tend to jump out at you. Cool colors tend to recede and fall away, okay? So that's very important in picture making, to keep that in mind. And of course, that rule can be broken, you know, playing tricks graphically and so forth. So, but just as a general rule, hot colors come at you, cool colors recede. Very important to remember that. Now, the next thing we do is that the prismatic, the chromatic colors are on the outside, right? Now you ask yourself the question, well, so how do I make darker colors? And one of the biggest misnomers is that if you want to make a darker red, just put some black in it. That's not the way it works, actually, right? The way to reduce the value of a color, of a prismatic, chromatic color, is you use the complement of that color. And the complements of color, right, are on the opposite side of the this configuration, this ring, okay, the wheel. Okay, they're on the opposite sides, right? So the complementary color, right, of red, for example, is green, right? Right there, right? And so the point I want to make first is that if we mix all these primary colors, right, together, let's say, and mix them all into the middle here, you would get black, right? And black is achromatic, right? It's the opposite, achromatic. Okay? So all the colors moving towards the middle are reduced in value. They're less prismatic, right? So the prismatic colors are on the outside, and as we move towards the middle, as we mix colors, they become less chromatic, they become achromatic. Okay, so back to the complementary colors, right? So red and green are complementary colors, right? And blue and orange are complementary colors, right? And violet and yellow are complementary colors, okay? And so you can see how this works. So let me go back again, right? So let's say I wanted to make a red that hold and reduce the value of it. In other words, make it darker, but I don't want it, the red, the energy in the color to sort of fade away as I reduce the value of it. And that is achieved by using the color. It's very, very important. In painting, there's often you see people making this mistake of just putting black into a color to make it, and it makes the color muddy. In order to maintain the integrity of the color as best as possible in reducing its value, you use the complement of that color, okay? So, in other words, let's say I wanted to make a slightly darker orange. I put a little blue in it, right? And if I want to make it darker, I just keep adding blue until the color becomes sort of neutral, neither blue nor orange, right? So, to continue today's lesson, in practical terms, we're going to do an exercise. We're going to recreate this color continuum, but in a linear fashion, right? We're going to create it linearly, right? So it's going to be red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, violet, Roy G. Biv. And we're going to use our three primary colors, right? And we're going to actually paint this prismatic continuum. Prismatic Continuum. Okay? Very good. Okay, so before we go on to painting our prismatic continuum, let's take a look at the dynamic of the water, okay, and the pigment. I have a piece of watercolor paper here, right? I'm going to just put a little water down on the piece of paper here, right, in several spots here. Right, without mixing any color into it. And I'm going to just show you how incredibly magical, right, the mixing of water, or the interaction of water and color. Okay? And so the watercolor can be, if you're like a control freak, watercolor can be very, very frustrating, meaning you have to come to terms with the inherent sort of wild dynamics of water, okay? And you have to come to terms with it. The watercolor is a process of trying to control the uncontrollable, so to speak, right? And so let's take a look at what happens when you take a little bit of pigment, right, and you add it to the water. Look at that. It starts to bleed into the, look at that, right? It does all kinds of crazy things, right? So that's, you see how the graphic of that is soft. Now, if I take the paint and I use less water and I put it on a dry area, it's very sharp, okay? Very important to remember that. Now, let's try with the blue, right? If I was to pick up a little bit of blue, right, and I touch it into the, look at that. Look how it bleeds. The water just receives the pigment, and it does all kinds of crazy, out of control things. So that's nice and soft graphically, right? Very important. And if I put it off onto a dry piece of it, dry area of the paper, see how sharp it comes up, right? And then there's the yellow. Okay. If I pick up a little bit of yellow, right, and I introduce it where it's wet, right, it just starts bleeding into the color. I'm just gliding the brush over the surface, right? And then if I hit the yellow on a dry spot, you can see how sharp the graphic is, right? Okay, so and then the water is you know, it's used to suspend the pigment, right? You can create different values, different amounts of water, right? Very soft values, right? So it's all about, the way you have to think about it is that the pigment is suspended in the water, and the water is the vehicle that distributes the pigment, or arranges it, right? And so there's that uncontrollable aspect of water. So inherently, there's a little bit of a fight there, right? There's an inherent sort of area where you have to control the uncontrollable. So you have to come to terms with that when you're talking about watercolor. Okay, so we're going to start this color continuum, right? We're going to paint the primary or prismatic color continuum. Chromatic, right? That's the bright colors on the periphery of our color wheel, okay? And we're going to start with our primary colors, yellow, blue, and red. Right? So the first thing, I have my watercolor paper, right? I'm going to remove a sheet of watercolor paper. this watercolor paper, right? It's the right stuff. It has a body to it, right? Assuming you've got the right materials. Okay, so watercolor paper. The first thing we want to do is we want to tape down the piece of paper. Okay, nice and neat. And all our projects, we like to do them neatly. We like to tape down the piece of paper to help manage the as the moisture gets into the paper kind of warps and takes on a life of its own. So you want to be able to manage that a little bit. And we like to have a nice clean edge to our work. Okay. And so since our assignment here is to create a continuum, okay, we're going to divide this piece of paper into several areas, linear areas, okay, so that we can practice this several times, our color continuum, right? So I'm going to create three areas for myself, try to make them similar in size, okay? Okay. And we're going to do one of these areas at a time, right? So, since we're creating those secondary colors using our primary colors, right, we want to sort of make note, okay? So we're going to create that red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, violet, right? The Roy G. Biv. So red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, violet, right? And then back to red. It would come all the way back around, right? So, okay. And what we want to do first thing is to wet down the area, okay? So I'm going to lay down a little bit of water just so that when we mix and when we introduce the pigments, right, the color, they're going to bleed together to create those secondary colors, right? Okay. All right. So here we have a layer of water, right? Right. And the idea is we're going to try to create a smooth gradient, as smooth as possible. So you want to have a generous amount of water on there. Okay. So to lay down our first color is our red, right? So I want to take a little bit of red. And I want to use quite a dense mixture with the water, quite a bit of pigment, right? So it stands up. So I'm going to first establish my red, right? I'm going to continue it, right? So I got to put enough red there to mix with my yellow to create that orange, right? So I'm carrying the red over here a little bit, right? Nice and red, right? So I'm going to use one of these water pools, right, to clean my brush, and the one next to it where it's cleaner to mix my colors. You want to keep the colors pure, right? So I'm mixing up my yellow. I'm just going to go down on where the yellow is, and I have to put enough down so that I can mix that blue with the green, right? I'm foreseeing, right? So here's my yellow, and then my orange. As they mix together, these colors, right? Here's my orange as I layer the yellow over the red. the orange is created. Right? And so the next thing I do is I clean up my brush. Right? I move on to my blue. Clean my brush. Okay, mix up a pool of blue. Nice solid blue. Okay, I'm going to lay it down where the blue belongs. Beautiful. Right, blue. Right, and then I got to interact it with the yellow to create that green. And so what you're starting to experience here is how the water and the color react and how the colors themselves react, right? So there's my green, right? And these transitions should be soft, right? So I can go in there and just soften that transition a little bit, right? And see, it's going to bleed and it's going to do its own thing. So, right, so I should extend my blue a little bit because I'm going to need to create that indigo. And I actually don't have enough blue here on my palette, so I'm going to just add a little more blue. Right, so here's, make sure I have enough blue down. Right, so here's my blue. And indigo is blue with just a little bit of red in it. It's not quite the violet. Okay, and so my violet on this end is blue. Right, so I'm going to put down a quick layer of blue. And it's going to be red going over that blue to create the violet. All right, so there's the blue. So I'm going to take a little bit of red to create that violet. And notice how I'm just gliding the color over the, it's creating that violet. Violet. And then the indigo is blue with just a little bit of red in it. Kind of like that. Right, and you notice how I'm just gliding the brush. Just gliding the brush. Okay, and so look at that. Out of 3 colors, we've created all these interesting colors, right? So we're going to dry this a little bit. Alrighty, so let's try that again, right? We're going to do it 3 times. We have that area designated, so let's try that again, right? So this exercise gets you started on the experience of mixing and getting the colors to interact, okay? And also it is getting you started in understanding the dynamic of the water in relationship to the pigment, right? So this is a great exercise to begin to get closer to the characteristics of the medium, right? So here again, we dried that up nicely. We're going to follow that same scheme, Roy G. Biv, right? So I'm going to make sure I have enough color. I have all enough color, red and blue and yellow, right? 3 colors, the origin of all color, right? And look how out of those 3 colors, we were able to create all these colors. So let's try this again. The first thing we do is what? We wet the surface. Oops. The brush had a little bit of pigment in there. Keep it as pure as possible, right? So I cleaned up my palette. I'm going to wet my surface again. Okay. Okay. Making sure there's enough water on there. Okay. All right. And you can experiment with the density of the color. Okay. All right. So my approach is going to be very similar. It's a matter of duplicating, right? So I'm going to make some red. Okay. I'm going to establish my red. And see how red creates all these pinks and things like that, right? So you have to keep that in mind. Different values and densities of color create other colors too. The pure color itself. So red, and I'm going to extend my red so that my orange has room to establish itself. Okay. Right, so I'm going to just kind of bleed it out so that it has a soft transition. So that's my red. And my next color is yellow, right? Okay. Let's get that down. So there's my yellow. Yellow. I'm going to put it over the red, and it's going to create that orange. Okay. I'm going to extend my yellow a little bit so that I can establish my green. All right, so I'm going to extend my yellow. Make sure I have enough color there. Okay. My next prismatic color is blue. All right, so we're going to pick up some blue, make sure we got a nice solid saturated mixture. Okay. And here's our blue. I'm going to pull it into the yellow to get our green. Okay. This is our blue. Ooh, look at that. The blue is interacting with the yellow. Okay, so here's our blue. And now I got to extend it so that it will incorporate my indigo. It'll incorporate my violet. All right, so I'm extending my blue. Not too strong here. for my violet, my indigo. It's got to be pretty dark. Okay, and now I go back to my red. Get some red going. All right, just a teeny bit over here. Whoop, whoop. My violet, I'm just gliding the brush. Okay. Right. That's that indigo. Blue with a little bit of red in it. Okay. And our violet. Okay. There you go. Again, soft transitions, interaction of color. I'm going to dry it up once more, and then I'm going to try it again. Okay, so let's continue. We're going to do one more, okay? And I need to make sure my palette is clean, right? And my water is clean. Okay, here's my water, nice and clean, okay? And so the one thing I wanted to mention was the technique of using a plate like this for a palette is really, really great because you can keep your pure color up on the edge, and you notice how things flow down into the lower area of the palette, right? It's a really great, and it cleans up easily with watercolor, etc. It's a great, great palette, okay? So what's the first thing we do? We wet down our surface, right? Okay, let's wet it down. Okay. There's different ways of wetting surface, right? We could have used this nebulizer thing like a spray, but in this particular case where the areas are compartmentalized very close in proximity, I don't want to spray all over the place. Okay, but so here is our Continuum. Okay, the surface is ready to go. So our first color is red. Okay, here we go, red. Okay, I'm going to see if I can do this with slightly less dense color. Okay, so and see what the results are. More subtle color. Okay, there's my red, and I left enough to create an orange there, right? So my next color is yellow. Right, I'm going to use less color, more water, right? So here's our yellow. I'm going to take it off into the overlap so we can establish our green after that. Right, so here's our yellow. And now I'm going to delicately overlap the yellow and the red, and I'm going to get my orange. There's our orange. Okay, I'm going to make sure this doesn't get out of control here, so let me just dry it up a little bit. Okay, now I need to make up my blue. Okay. Okay, blue. And we're going to do very, very delicate layer of blue. Not too thick, right? We're doing a, okay, so I'm going to light blue. Right, and now as I move over the yellow, should give me our greens. Oops, don't want to make it too dense. There's our green. Okay. Soften that edge. Okay, now need to extend the blue a little bit. This is going this way so I can get all these other colors involved. All right. A lot less saturated than the prior two. Okay, which is fine. So now I'm going to segregate my blue. Okay. See how I'm always, in this particular case, working at trying to keep my colors pure. Right, so now I'm back to the red. I'm going to, nice thin amount of red, not too much. So I'm going to create my violet. My violet. Nice. Violet works a lot better when it's light. All right, and I'm going to extend it. Indigo's a little tough to get because, okay. So there you go. Maybe I cheat a little bit and a little shot of blue in there to get the darkness. Okay. And there you go. And there's a very, very soft prismatic color continuum. Less saturated, right? Right? And all these nuances are part of the characteristic of watercolor. That's the uncontrollable. Right? And so here you go. We have this nice set of continuums that we did. And so once this is finished, you delicately remove the tape. And now, as you can see, as you remove the tape, if the tape is really strong, it might rip the paper, so you have to go real slow and make sure not to rip the paper. So as I'm removing this, see the way I'm pulling the tape as close to the surface as possible. If I pulled up, it probably would rip the paper. So that's very important going forward. All your assignments, you want to be delicate in your removal of tape. Okay, see the way I'm pulling it along the bottom of the surface? Okay. Okay. And we're working towards results that are nice and neat. Whoops, see that? Started to rip up. I'm going to start from this end. Maybe I'll have better luck. Okay. It's not 100% dry there. There's still some pools of color, but it's coming off okay. There you go. And we remove the tape. all around. And as you see, it creates for a nice, beautiful, neat work assignment. And there you go, your Prismatic color continuum. All these colors created with 3 colors, right? And you want to take your number 2 pencil, right? And you want to label this Prismatic color continuum. This was a demo. Okay. May 13th, 20. Okay. So as you can see, we have a nice color continuum. And all these nuances, these so-called aberrations and things like that, pooling, and that's the nature of the beast, okay? And so there's your Prismatic color continuum. 3 colors, limited palette, blue, red, yellow, Roy G. Biv.